Hi everyone and welcome to another piano video here on the Merriam Pianos YouTube channel. My name is Stu Harrison and in today's video we're going to be comparing Pianoteq 7's Hamburg Steinway D with the Vienna Symphonic Library Synchron Hamburg Steinway D sample library. This has been a fascinating exploration because in a bit of a paradoxical way, diving into VST piano instruments actually gives the opportunity to learn so much more about acoustic pianos than just sitting in front of acoustic piano, because you can't manipulate any of these settings when you're in front of a real piano. And so when you have a decent set of monitors, or a great set of monitors, I can't say I have a great set, but they're decent, when you've got a good interface, when you've sort of eliminated all the super weak links and you can just listen to the sound that these plugins are producing, not only is it a ton of fun from a hobbyist standpoint because it's like a whole other instrument and a much cheaper one than the real thing. Think about it. We are sampling instruments that go for at least $150,000 and up, for really, even with all of the other equipment, a few $1,000s. So that part's cool. But the opportunity to understand the acoustic instruments itself even better and more deeply is quite interesting. So welcome to today's video. If it's the first time that you have joined us here on the channel, welcome. We do all kinds of things, including digital piano reviews, acoustic piano reviews. Sometimes we talk about musical concepts. Sometimes we get into software. So hit that subscribe button if you are enjoying the video at any point, find it really useful, really valuable, either as a hobbyist or as a potential shopper. And make sure to hit that notification bell as well, because we would love to see you back for more videos in the future. So without further ado, let's dive straight into this review of these two beautiful VSTs of the Hamburg Steinway D. So a couple of things up front for people who are totally new to this. I know if people, viewers out there are seeing in the title that it's a VST comparison and it's the Synchron D versus the Pianoteq D, well, there's going to be all kinds of viewers, possibly like yourself, who are already familiar with the space and are tuning in because they really want to see that specific comparison done. But there may be other people who are generally unfamiliar with the world of VSTs. And so here's a quick little background. Pianoteq is part of a rare breed of software that basically models the sound. In other words, it is a working real-time computer model of what makes a piano tone tick. All of the components that go into it, they give you the ability to manipulate. So if you can see on my screen here, this is the Hamburg Steinway D that we've got right here. And you can see that we've got tuning options. We can set to whether it's tuned to 440, the unison width, meaning the difference between the 3 strings if we're talking about the trichords, or the 2 strings if we're talking about the bichords. Octave stretching, which is a tuning technique to sort of kind of open up the sound in the 2 extremes. Direct sound duration. Then we get into voicing, which is hammer hardness at the various dynamic levels. This is going to become quite important as we get into the video, the spectrum profile, as well as hammer noise, strike point, soft pedal. These are all considerations that are real life considerations for piano designers and piano technicians. The voicing is more of a technician thing. The design is definitely more on the manufacturer. And then when we get down to here, we get into damper position, last damper, mute. These are more effect, sort of artifact type sounds that get added onto the core tone. Equalizer, which is kind of a post thing. Effects, which generally in this plugin refers to compression and reverb. And then a module, which is very cool. It's essentially a recording module. Or like a studio environment module where you can pick from a variety of different microphones, and you can have up to 5 mics placed around the instrument, and then you can send those off to your left and right channels, your output 1 and 2. You also have the option to go binaural, which is to ditch all of the microphones, and it's simulating what would happen if you were just listening with your ears, playing the instrument as a player. So none of the sound that we hear when we play Pianoteq is recorded from a real piano. It's referenced very heavily towards a real piano. In fact, it's endorsed by Steinway themselves, but it is not, in fact, a tone that's been recorded. And so here's the sound of a Hamburg Steinway D. This is a modified setting. I'll explain why it's modified, of studio recording mode. Every module in Pianoteq comes with a variety of presets, but the reason I have picked this is because I spent a considerable amount of time, I'm not even sure, but it was probably close to 2 hours, attempting to get 2 settings between the Synchron and the Pianoteq that actually resembled one another. And it was difficult, and I'm not sure I totally succeeded, which in itself kind of brings up an interesting concept that these 2 instruments, or these 2 plugins, have not really come to represent the same instrument in the same way. Even though they're 2 separate pianos that they're using as a reference, the behaviors are still quite different when you get something as accurate and thorough as the Synchron engine up against Pianoteq. I'm not really drawing any conclusions or attempting to draw any conclusions in terms of which one has more musical merit. This is more just pointing out the differences and the process that I went through discovering how to manipulate both of them and what one might give you versus the other. So on the Synchron, I've gone with a player setting, and I'm using a little bit of tube, the medium microphones, and the surround. On the Pianoteq, we've got a couple of U87s sort of serving the mid, but they're also tube mics, so that's why I've given a bit of tube and mid over here. Then we've got two omnidirectional kind of pencil microphones way off in the distance here, giving more of a bit of a surround room mix. So we've got surround turned on over here in about the same proportion as we've got some volumes over there. So trying to set the same kind of microphone setting, and we're not using any simulated reverb on the Synchron. We are using the simulated reverb on the Pianoteq because it's all simulated, so might as well give the Pianoteq the fighting chance with the reverb that it has as a preset. Let's listen to the Synchron and how this plays now. So first of all, the difference in the way you can manipulate these two plugins are probably the closest of any of the plugins that I've seen out there. Both give you a simulated kind of studio recording environment where you've got a variety of microphones. You've got the ability to mix those microphones. You've got pretty extensive control over the piano itself. We flip over here. We've got, obviously basic, reverb, which I'm not using, the control over the dynamic range, which you also have over here. You've got sustain, sostenuto, and soft pedal controls, tuning, octave, semitone, MIDI sensitivity, half pedaling. I have engaged the sympathetic resonance and the body resonance on the Steinway because I find that it just sounds a little more authentic, particularly in the mid dynamic range as well as the lower half of the piano. So they're pretty similar when you compare it to any other sample-based plugin out there. Even the Garaton doesn't give you quite the same sense that you're in a post-production studio kind of environment as these two do. Biggest difference, of course, being that this is a sample library based and this is a modeling based. So I mentioned that I did try and get these as close as possible, but you can still hear that the Synchron Hamburg D has a brighter clarity to it, and obviously the first thing I tried to do was solve that discrepancy on Pianoteq using voicing, which would be my first instinct, not going to like an EQ or anything, but actually trying to manipulate that through voicing. But I just couldn't get quite the same couldn't quite get there. So then I was saying to myself, well, maybe I should take a look at the spectrum profile. Now this is the balance of all of the upper harmonics, and this is why I have the EQ down here. And this was quite interesting. So we're on the Pianoteq right now, so I'm just going to play concert A. Well, actually, let's start over here, because this is the one we can't really manipulate. This is the actual recording of the D. You can see that there's a number of other kind of nodes that occur off the principal. You can see the 440 spiking up right there, but then there's going to be one at 880, then there's secondary that pop up, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see that the second partial doesn't form quite a nice step down. Sorry about all that banging on the A. It's the only way to kind of get that sustained. So to create a similar effect, I suppressed the second partial and emphasized the third partial a little bit on the Pianoteq to try and get that same profile. So now the first is still a little hot. Bring that second one up just a little bit. There. So now you can see and we've got the voicing in the forte range pretty hard. Now, as you try and bring that up, though, there almost becomes a bit of a phasing issue or a bit of a mid-range throatiness to the piano as your mezzo range or your piano range gets too hard on the hammer. Now the benefit to any piano module in Pianoteq is by using the hammer hardness like this, you can really manipulate the tonal range of the piano, because the bigger the spread between these three, the more there's going to be a tonal change from soft to loud. And that's pretty much fixed in something like the Synchron. So you either like the piano or you don't. And you'll notice that on the Synchron Steinway D, it sort of retains that slightly bright bias right down into the most quiet dynamic ranges. But here's one of the biggest differences I noticed between these two, is in the lower third. And this is where I just was totally stumped on the Pianoteq. Because if you take a look at the EQ down on a note such as that, on the Steinway. So you're seeing so the actual fundamental is right around the 60. So it's this guy coming up right here. But then there's this huge amount of tone, warmth, coming up through here. And it's in proportion, a little bit more than the fundamental, but there's just this massive amount of air being moved in here. When we go over to the D, you notice that that's really biased much further up into your 1K2 range. There seems to be just some kind of a je ne sais quoi warmth, or I don't know why I did that, warmth around the actual sample on the Steinway down in some of these lower ranges that tends to be a little more aggressive, and you get a little bit less of the nuanced warmth on the Pianoteq, and that wasn't something I was able to Yeah, you might almost describe that lower range of the Hamburg D on the Pianoteq as a little bit cold. It's not unpleasant. But anyway, both plugins have a huge number of presets. I already mentioned that, but let's just have a look at how many there are. Never mind that you can manipulate all the settings once you are in to those presets. So you've got room mix presets. That's going to be similar to what the Pianoteq will give you. Then you've got surround to stereo down mixes, which is really taking a much wider array, multi-point, 5-point, 7-point stereo that you could, and sort of mixing down into stereo. You've got a decatree, which is like a 3-point mix down into stereo. So a pretty wide array of microphone recording presets to play with. Or, forget the presets, you can do almost all of it right here in the mix window. Over here, you've got the same array of presets, quite extensive actually. So under the lid, player wide, player clean, and I've gone through every single one of these. Studio recording gave me kind of the closest off-the-shelf character. So as I said, there's a huge amount to play with both of these. Benefits of the Synchron to me are that there is such a brilliant recording of the room itself as well as the piano that it really truly gives you the sense of space and a sense of air that doesn't feel at all simulated. And it really, for people who've been fortunate enough to be behind real 9-foot pianos in big spaces like that, it just immediately recalls your being into that space, and it can be a very creative force for people who get inspired by moments like that. So I really like the fact that the samples have been done so well, that the programming behind has been done so well, that they managed to capture that air around the piano in such an authentic way. And I think that's part of the magic of that Synchron piano. As I said in a couple of other reviews, particularly on, I think, the CFX review I did, it gives you the visceral feeling of actually being behind a 9-foot as a player, not just as a audience member, but what it actually feels like to be a player. On the Pianoteq, there's even more things that you can manipulate. So without the side-by-side comparison, there's literally any kind of a tone that you can go and you can get on the Pianoteq. So it's unbelievably diverse and quite malleable, I guess is the right word. And I also find that with the Pianoteq, you wind up learning a lot about the piano itself as you play around with all of these things. So You know, two different beasts, but I think it's going to come down to really personal preference, personal style, and probably what your background with acoustic pianos is yourself. If I had somebody here, or one was sitting here without an extensive experience of playing acoustics, I'm not sure that some of the things that I'm picking up on the Synchron would really be as connective as they are to me, because the Pianoteq does give you a lot of options. Anyway, we're going to finish the video off by creating a short recording and playing that same recording back, same MIDI track back through both of these plugins so you can have a really nice apples to apples. So I'm going to do that right now. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll be back in just a second to listen to those two recordings. We hope you've really enjoyed this comparison of two fantastic plugins, the Synchron piano from Vienna Symphonic Library, loaded up with their Hamburg D sample library, and Pianoteq, an industry favorite, loaded up with their Hamburg D. If you've enjoyed the video, found it entertaining, useful, or anything in between, we'd really love for you to subscribe and come back as a regular viewer. It's a phenomenal community of piano hobbyists, appreciators, shoppers from all over the world. Participate in those comments. We try and get to as many of those as we possibly can. My name is Stu Harrison. This has been Merriam Pianos on YouTube, and we'll see you again soon.